So it is always a pleasure to speak with the Speaker of the House, Cameron Sexton. We seem to be, and I don't want to assume anything, but we seem to be winding down the General Assembly as we slowly make our way to budget conversations. And before you know it, the House and the Senate will gavel out and all the membership will go back to their respective districts. I think it's a good time to reflect on the session that has been and what is left to do with the Speaker of the House. The General Assembly of the great state of Tennessee. He is Cameron Sexton. He joins us on the show. Cameron, good afternoon.
Hey, Matt. Thank you.
Cameron, the most important question I'm going to ask you today, I believe. You ready?
Yeah.
What do you make of Coach Josh Heupel and the Tennessee Volunteers saying goodbye to Nico Ilimaliava and moving on from his service to the team?
No, I mean, I think it sends a strong message, to be honest with you. And I think it solidifies what college coaches, well, at least quality college coaches who are out there who say that, you know, the team is more important than the I. And so it was a great message. I hope other colleges will come through with it. But he's part of a team. He's not an individual. He might be an individual on the team, but it's a team sport. And if he's there more about money than he is about playing for the University of Tennessee, then he needs to go somewhere else.
I thought that question would rile you up a little bit more, but you gave me a good answer. I mean, absolutely, 100%. And frankly, I was joking around yesterday, and everybody knows I'm a Georgia Bulldog, but I appreciate Coach Heupel doing it. I mean, I think it's time. And in all seriousness, Cameron, something at some point, and I know you've got more important fish to fry over there in the General Assembly, but at some point, we got to figure out this NIL and transfer portal deal. Do we not? Yeah, no,
it's crazy. I mean, it really is. And when you can transfer up to 2 times a year, we had Anthony Hardaway here. Penny Hardaway was here, and we were talking to him about it. We talked to other college coaches about it, presidents of universities about it. And it's a huge problem. And look, I can tell you, after looking back, the thing is Nico was making a lot of money. And I will say that the value that he gave to the team was not worth that amount of money. I mean, he didn't perform to the level, and I guess he thought he did, and, there he goes.
There he goes. And, once again, hopefully they'll get it solved. But I wanted to lead with that to get you all fired up, get you ready to go, Cameron, for some of these other questions. So now,
if you told me it was going to Georgia, that might get a little
that might be a different story. What do you? I mean, I feel like we're winding down, right? I mean, the session, we've got maybe a week or so left. We'll tackle our budgets coming up next week.
No, budgets will be up tomorrow. So the House budget will be on the floor tomorrow, probably late afternoon. We were on the floor most of today going through some calendars. We still working off that one. But the budget should be tomorrow, and then after that we'll probably have maybe 150 bills left, I think, something like that. So we should be finished up next week.
What do you believe in the general session, not the special? I'll exclude the scholarship fund, the Freedom Scholarship Act, but in the general session, in your opinion, what have been the most important things that you've accomplished this year so far?
Well, I mean, look, first and foremost is always a budget and making sure that we maintain our budget integrity. And also we've limited the amount of federal money in our budget. The COVID money is slowly going out, and so that number will go down. But we have less money in the budget today from the federal government than we've ever have. So that's a good thing. I think we're continuing to budget wisely, meaning we're not spending a lot of revenue for recurring expenses. We're doing it for non-recurring, which means that if something happens to the economy, and we're watching it very carefully, that we're prepared to handle it. And so outside of that, I mean, look, we're working on a lot of criminal justice stuff. There's a lot of different education things. There's still the Bo Watson, William Lambert bill that's out there. There's some constitutional amendments out there dealing with victims' rights and allowing judges the discretion to deny bail. We did a lot of bail reform bills today that the bail industry doesn't like, but they're needed to bring them back into control. It's a wild, wild west with some of these companies out there. And so it's been a good session. It really has.
There was, it occurs to me, you mentioned some of the legislation that's going on and some of the communities that are impacted by it. There was a thought that the state might take over the Memphis school system. And
yeah, are
we working on that?
Still pending. We are. I mean, look, you have to draw a line somewhere, man. I mean, look at it. we've been spending about $1 billion a year for X number of years, and the locals are spending $1 billion a year for that last number of years, and we're not getting anything in return for that investment. I mean, the return on investment, you would, if you're a business, you just close it and go home and go do something else. And so, we're looking at a solution that the House and Senate can agree to. I think we're pretty close, and we'll see what happens. But something has to be done. And I will tell you, the difference is there's a school there called Pure Academy. It's a private boarding school, Category 1 school. They've taken the same kids that are failing in those schools that were 2 to 3 years behind or 2 to 3 grade levels behind. They bring them in. It's a boarding school. They change everything around them. It takes about 3 to 6 months to get them reacclimated and let them become children again. And now what they have is 85% of those kids are going to college, 100% are graduating high school, and those other 15% are getting a certificate in some technical vocational skill where they can go make a living. So the opportunity is there, the success is there, but we cannot continue going down the same road that they're going down right now.
Cameron Sexton, our guest, Speaker of the House of the General Assembly of the state of Tennessee, talking about activity this session thus far. Let's talk immigration. I mean, obviously, this perhaps has we've seen the most emotion surrounding this issue of this immigration bill that would challenge Plyler v. Doe, that was, I think, affirmed by the United States Supreme Court in the early 1980s, suggesting that a state has a responsibility, regardless of immigration status, to allow young people to attend public schools. This bill would change that. It is a clear, obviously, it is a by design to get into the courts, to move it up through the system, to challenge whether or not that ruling was appropriately adjudicated at the time. Considering the emotions surrounding this, and I understand emotions die down, Cameron, do you believe, or I guess explain why you would feel like this it has value and that it's worth what the legislature, the time that you've spent on it?
Well, the value is having the Supreme Court take up the case and reevaluate that decision, which has been, 40, 50 years. And so, but what you also have to do, Matt, is make sure that this piece of legislation will get to the Supreme Court and have the Supreme Court take it up. If the Supreme Court doesn't take it up, then this piece of legislation didn't do what it was designed to do, which is to challenge that court case. So that's the first thing we have to figure out. Will this be able to be challenged and get to the Supreme Court, or will they keep it in the lower courts, first and foremost? The second part of the bill, which I really like, is the data collection. We can all pontificate, hypothesize, and make assumptions over how many kids are in our school systems are illegally. You can look at English second language, but some of those kids are not here illegally. They just don't talk our language or speak our language. And so I think a key part of that bill, hopefully we can get it passed, is the data collection. I think we should have the schools tell us, what kids are there that are citizens, what kids are there that are documented, what kids are there that has no documentation or undocumented or illegal. And then we can really digest what the problem is. It may be a huge problem. It may be a small problem, and we address it accordingly. But it's one of those things, I'm about process, procedure, and about data. I would love to have that data, because right now we do not have that data being given to us.
Cameron, I know you to be meticulous when it comes to the details of legislation. It's part of the reason that your colleagues have selected you to be the Speaker of the House. With that in mind, I want to ask you about IVF. I don't know of any reasonable, rational person that disagrees that parents ought to have the ability to seek in vitro fertilization in the state of Tennessee. And to my knowledge, that's never been denied any Tennessee parents. It was codified this year in the General Assembly, but some are suggesting that might put that codification at loggerheads with our definition of human life, considering how so many of these IVF centers utilize the fertilized embryos and then eventually, in some cases, destroy those embryos. Has this come to your desk at all, this conversation about the possibility that these two pieces of law do not jive with one another? And if so, what do you have to say about it?
Well, so yeah, we had the IVF contraceptive bill on the House floor last week, and it passed. And basically what it did is to your point, it codified exactly what the practice is in Tennessee. And that practice is in existence after we passed the protection bill, life protection bill, which defines when life begins. And so all that bill did is codify exactly what the process is now, what is legally done. There was an amendment that was put on about FDA language, where if the FDA change it, then this changes. If they define certain products as being abortifacient drugs and not contraceptives, that allowed us, I believe, to have the Tennessee Right to Life group to become neutral on that bill and say, okay, we can accept this bill at that point. So I think we're in a good place. Look, it's a tough question, right? I think we all believe that women should have the capability of having contraceptives. We've had that in our society for a long, long time. And so making sure that they have the ability to have contraceptives, if they so choose, as long as they're not abortifacient type of drugs, is the conversation. And that's what we think we did, that we put the amendment on to make sure that the Right to Life was agree with it. And we'll see. But IVF is a tough thing. There's a lot of families that have children that came through the IVF process, and that process needs to be protected the best that it can. And we think we have accomplished that right now. It may change in the future. It's hard to say exactly what that will look like.
I mean, are you concerned at all that it puts any IVF center at risk if they go through their normal procedure? Because it's my understanding, I don't have intimate knowledge of this, it's my understanding that, parents might have multiple fertilized embryos, and if they have the children that they have so desperately wanted to have, that at some point down the line, those embryos might get destroyed by the centers. But would that not be in contrast to what the law says with regard to human rights? Well,
I mean, I think there's so many court cases out there. When we worked on the legislation they obviously worked with the AG's office to make sure we don't get out of compliance.
Sure.
Also worked with the legal department here, worked with the Tennessee Right to Life and what that would look like. And so what I think is when we got the final bill, there's going to be people who disagree with it, and I understand. But when we got the final bill, all the boxes were checked off, believing that we were in the correct spot we needed to be based on what the current practice is in the state of Tennessee.
I always like to note the vote totals in the House, and I take special attention or pay special attention to those votes that might, split the caucus to a little degree. And it seemed like the caucus was a little bit split on the primary bill, Lee Reeves legislation. Tell me where you are on this legislation, what your understanding of it is, and why you were supportive of making sure that the state of Tennessee, even on the local level, stuck with the primary system if that's what they're doing currently.
Yeah, so I mean that bill basically what it really does is whatever process you're currently using, it allows you to continue to use that process. If you're using primary, you use primary, you can't go to caucus. If you're using caucus, you can stay caucus, but if you ever go to primary, then you have to go to primary. You can't come back to caucus. Look, at the end of the day, there's both sides of this issue as well, and I understand it. But there's a situation where you have caucuses and you have party bosses who decide who is going to be the nominees, and they nominate them. There's some kind of committee. And then what they do is on some Saturday at some random time, they have an election and people come. The problem is there's people who work on the weekends. There's people who are in college who can't make it. There's people who are serving our military and can't make it. There's people who decide to get sick or maybe even have babies on a weekend that they can't control, and they lose their opportunity to vote. And those elections aren't protected by the Secretary of State. They don't have the election integrity mechanism that we have. And so what our bill really allows is for whatever is going on right now to be going on. But in my mind, the best capability is through a primary system. You have more people who vote. And so a caucus, there was multiple examples of people saying that there's caucuses in various counties. They have 400 people who caucus. That's wonderful. But in a primary, there's more than 400 Republicans who want to vote. And so you have 20,000. In another one, they had 2,000 Republicans vote in the primary, and when they changed to a caucus, they had 150. Look, it really comes down to, do you want your party bosses to make the decision, or do you want the voters to make the decision? I think you rely with the voters. And Matt, if you remember when Kamala Harris was coronated through a caucus, right? Everybody was outraged. How in the world can you do a caucus to nominate her? How is that possible? That's ridiculous. There needs to be a fair election. So if that's the process, Republicans were saying that too, like that was ridiculous. You need to go through an election process. If primaries are good enough for state candidates and federal candidates, then it should be good enough for the local candidates.
And finally, I know our time's limited, but finally on the question of, I know that the what I call the vape legislation, the increase in taxation on certain vaping products, the elimination of Chinese-based vapes. I've had a lot of business owners contacting me because we've had a couple of discussions about this legislation. Where is it in the House? Is it? I honestly don't know if it's gotten to the floor or if it's tracking to the floor.
It was tracking to the floor. We had Deputy Speaker Zachary work all weekend with all the parties involved to the best visibility and be able to get to a compromised place where there was no clear winner. They all had to lose something, and usually that's a pretty good place for legislation in the end. And so we need to get control of it. Look, the problem that we have with hemp is we never got control of it. So now you have all these hemp stores advertising they have THC, which they do through the hemp plant, which is legal in the state of Tennessee. It's not a marijuana plant. And now it has the same THC levels. It's getting people high. And all of a sudden, we have a huge problem with hemp and THC, the byproduct, when you go through a process. Vape was going in that direction, and we had to get control of the vape industry, whether it's the Chinese things or other stuff. And also in the vape, they have an open system where you can take the THC and put into these vape things that are being made. And the fascinating part about vape, Matt, is we are selling products in the United States, in the state of Tennessee, that China refuses to allow to sell in their country. But it's okay in Tennessee. And so we're trying to get a better control of that as well.
Speaker of the House, Cameron Sexton, always a good conversation. Thank you for spending some time with us. Best of luck as the session winds down, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Thank you. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, there's Speaker of the House, Cameron Sexton.